Shortly after meeting in Paris with European and Ukrainian officials, Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned if Ukraine and Russia don't agree to end the war in the coming days, the United States needs to move on.
We came here yesterday to sort of begin to talk about more specific outlines of what it might take to end the war, to try to figure out very soon, and I'm talking about a matter of days, not a matter of weeks, whether or not this is a war that can be ended. If it can, we're prepared to do whatever we can to facilitate that and make sure that it happens, that it ends in a durable and just way. If it's not possible, if we're so far apart that this is not going to happen, then I think the president's probably at a point where he's going to say, well, we're done.
CNN international diplomatic editor Nick Robertson joins me now. Nick, thank you so much for being here. Have you heard any clarity as to what Rubio means by moving on? And or is it your sense that, obviously you could hear the frustration in his voice, that this is a negotiating tactic?
It certainly does put pressure on all sides, and it's not clear which way he's aiming that pressure. Is it more on Putin, who's been holding out for over a month on an unconditional ceasefire that Ukraine signed up to more than a month ago? There's that. We know that President Trump has talked about his frustrations with Russia and the possibility of putting secondary sanctions and tariffs on Russia. But President Trump's also been very clear that he's frustrated with Vladimir Zelensky and is frustrated with, the minerals deal. Has been frustrated as well by Ukraine's position that it's held. And Zelensky himself appeared to be reacting last night to what Steve Witkoff has been saying, and Zelensky accusing Witkoff of channeling Vladimir Putin and taking his lines, and Zelensky saying that he was not ready to commit to giving up territory that Russia has seized. That's a red line. Is that a pressure that's been happening behind the scenes? Rubio spoke about putting a broad framework to all parties. But again, we're not clear who is getting the maximum pressure. Certainly from the Russian perspective, they hope the pressure's going on Ukraine. Where it goes from here, the next couple of days, as Rubio says, will be critical. There will be, we understand, another round of talks, the same parties getting around the table here in London. And perhaps significant to that, Prime Minister Keir Starmer here just a few hours ago spoke with President Trump.
That is certainly interesting. Nick, thank you so much for that reporting. Appreciate it. I want to now bring in CNN's Alex Marquardt and Kylie Atwood. First, Alex, Rubio's comments. It is noteworthy that he didn't call out Russia or Ukraine. What does that tell you?
Yeah, I mean, the question that Nick was asking, whether it's more pressure on Russia or Ukraine, I mean, certainly he could have put pressure on Russia saying, if you don't go along with this in the next few days, we'll impose more sanctions, we'll impose more tariffs. That is something that Trump has said. I mean, we don't know what Rubio had said in a conversation yesterday with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Certainly, there could have been that implication that they would start to use the stick rather than the carrot of concessions that they have made until this point. And certainly, the U.S. is expecting concessions from both sides. So both sides will be feeling this pressure now. I think we could expect to see something from the Russian side, something incremental, because they have shown a willingness to try to get back into Trump's good graces. And let's remember, the Ukrainians have been playing ball. They did agree to that ceasefire 5 weeks ago, while the Russians have added conditions. They said that sanctions need to be lifted. So they've been going along with this. Trump doesn't just want a ceasefire. He wants a full peace deal. And as we know, he's getting very impatient. His special envoy, Keith Kellogg, has talked about a 100-day time frame. That's almost certainly going to run out. But we haven't seen any evidence, at least not today, that the U.S. is ready to flip the script and really put the screws on Russia to try to end this war.
Yeah. And I do want to ask both of you about some new reporting that you have about, we heard Nick talk about Steve Witkoff. He's the president's special envoy. He was at the meeting with Rubio yesterday. A longtime U.S. official told you about Witkoff, quote, very few people outside the White House inner circle have worked with him. He operates as quite a lone ranger. How are we seeing that play out?
Well, just look at his expanding portfolios, right? He first started as the guy for the Middle East, but President Trump, according to sources we've talked to in the White House and close to Witkoff, was impressed with those early wins that he had with the ceasefire and hostage release deal. Of course, many of that teed up by the Biden administration, but he expanded what Witkoff was in charge of. He's now the point person for Russia in the Ukraine war. He's also, of course, the point person for Iran in the last 2 weeks, sitting down with the Iranian foreign minister. And we've gotten a sense of how Witkoff actually prepares for those meetings. He's not looking for these really thick briefing books that typically diplomats would look for, State Department briefings. He looks for impromptu meetings, I'm told, sources close to Witkoff. He looks for his intelligence briefings that he has been getting increasingly so. But it's also that connectivity that he has to Trump that he really relies on to prepare for these engagements. And that is one of the reasons that you talk to people inside the White House, you talk to people outside the White House. They're now comparing Steve Witkoff to the role that Jared Kushner once played during the first Trump administration. Really Witkoff is able to text with family members of Trump, I'm told. He has walk-in privileges to the Oval Office. He has all of this access that other members of the Trump administration currently don't necessarily have. There are questions, though, about how effective it's going to be in leading to actual long-lasting deals here.
And Alex, you talked to several officials diplomats, included in those, who were supportive of that Lone Ranger MO. One said, we know he's talking for Trump, which is what you were saying, so conversations with him are extremely valuable, but you were also reminded that he has a very steep learning curve because he has no diplomatic experience. He's a business person. One veteran diplomat said, on the Russia side, he is up against very experienced diplomats and operators. The concern is that you have someone who is outmatched by his counterparts, and that is not a good place to be.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to people who fall on both sides. I mean, I spoke with one Middle Eastern official who said that Witkoff can be very effective because he has that direct line to Trump, and he is so focused on making these deals. But there are plenty of people who we spoke with before and during this reporting who point to some naivete and a lack of experience when it comes to the technical details. When you look at these three portfolios, Ukraine, Gaza, and Iran, at the end of the day, if you're going to complete these deals, you have to really wade into the weeds and know the technicalities of this. And we have been told that, you know, he wants to get the ball rolling and eventually hand that off. But there are certainly people who fear that he is up against some very formidable officials, namely in Iran and Russia, during these very complex negotiations. And there's another concern that I've heard from a number of people, both European and American officials, is that he does tend to err on the side of Putin's talking points and echo some of those when it comes to perhaps handing over these eastern territories of Ukraine to Russia, not letting Ukraine join NATO. And these talking points, I was told by one U.S. official, it's not just in public, where he said that to Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity, but he's saying that also behind the scenes in senior high-level meetings with Trump officials. And that does give a lot of people pause, certainly the people who would hope that the U.S. would continue to support Ukraine.
Yeah, fascinating reporting. I encourage everyone to look at it in its entirety on CNN.com. Thanks, you both.